They told you life is unpredictable, that things just happen and you have to adapt. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever believed? What if every situation, every person, every so-called random event in your life has been quietly following a script you've been writing without realizing it? This isn't about positive thinking or sugar-coated optimism. It's about the mechanical truth Neville Goddard revealed. The reality as mirror principle means your outer world is a faithful reflection of your inner one. Your assumptions shape reality. Your feeling is the secret, and nothing in your experience is accidental. Here's the twist. Trying to change your life without changing your inner state is like trying to fix your reflection by wiping the mirror. The real transformation comes when you live in the end, when you shift your state first, so the world reflects you in ways that match the new you. If you've ever felt stuck, overlooked, or at the mercy of circumstances, what you're about to discover can flip your reality inside out. Because once you realize imagination creates reality, you stop chasing the mirror and start shaping the image. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that nothing out there is truly independent from you. Every conversation, every smile, every argument, even the random delays, all of them are echoes of something deeper, something inside. Neville Goddard would call this a fact of consciousness. The world reflects you without fail. It's unsettling at first, like suddenly realizing the rules of the game were never what you thought. Think about those moments when you've switched jobs or moved to a new city, only to find yourself facing the same frustrations. Different faces, different places, same story. That's the mirror in action. You can repaint the walls, change the scenery, or rewrite your schedule. But if the image inside hasn't changed, the reflection remains. The truth is, life is like a hall of mirrors, not the warped carnival kind, but ones that faithfully return your inner state. When you carry a quiet sense of worthiness, people respond to you differently. When you carry self-doubt, the world obliges with reasons to doubt yourself. This is change, inner change, outer, in its purest form. I remember a friend who always said, "I just attract the wrong kind of people." No matter where she went, she met the same controlling, dismissive personalities. It wasn't bad luck. It was the reality as mirror principle at work. Her inner story about the wrong kind of people was painting itself onto the faces of strangers. That's the frustrating part. The mirror doesn't care if you like what you see. It's not judging, it's simply reflecting, and sometimes it's brutally honest. But once you recognize that this is how it works, you stop trying to bargain with the reflection and start working with the image source, yourself. Of course, at first it's tempting to deny this. How can I be responsible for what they did to me? But here's the thing. Responsibility doesn't mean blame, it means ownership. If the outer scene is showing up in a certain way, it's because your assumptions shape reality, consciously or unconsciously, to make it so. And these reflections aren't always negative. Sometimes the mirror surprises you with kindness or opportunity, and you realize you've been walking in a better state than you thought. This is when you start paying closer attention, because those moments reveal the quiet, powerful mechanics of the law of assumption. The mirror is relentless, but it's also loyal. Feed it a state of peace, and peace multiplies in your world. Feed it chaos, and the outer world becomes a stage for chaos. This is why Neville's students learned to live in the end, because the reflection can only show what the inner projector is already playing. And perhaps the most humbling part, you can't turn the mirror off. Even when you think you're just observing, you're actually radiating a state. And the imagination creates reality. Dynamic is still in motion. It's 24/7, whether you're aware of it or not. Which brings us to the deeper teaching. If the mirror is unavoidable, the most logical move is to master what you're projecting. And to do that, we have to understand what Neville Goddard meant when he explained the law of reflection. Neville Goddard had a way of taking what seemed like mystical poetry and revealing it as a precise law of life. His law of reflection was simple. The outer world is not separate from you. It's the direct echo of your inner state. Like sound bouncing back from a canyon wall, your inner conversations and emotional tones return to you in the form of people, events, and circumstances. This isn't about vague energy or superstition. It's cause and effect, just on a level most people never consider. Your inner projection, as Neville described it, is constantly broadcasting. The tone of that broadcast, the assumptions you hold, the feelings you return to, dictates the picture that appears on the outer screen. Picture carrying around an invisible movie projector. Inside it, the film is your self-concept, who you believe yourself to be, what you believe is possible, and how you feel about it. Everywhere you go, that projector is running, and life simply shows the movie you've loaded into it. People often misunderstand this and think it means, I caused that exact event to happen. It's more accurate to say your state of being attracted the type of event that matches it. If you're living in a state of quiet confidence, opportunities find you. If you're steeped in lack, you'll notice every reason to keep feeling lack. Neville would often remind his students that assumptions shape reality, whether you're aware of them or not. This is why two people can experience the same external situation, but interpret and live it in completely different ways. Their inner assumptions tint the experience. And here's the part most people resist. The world isn't doing this to you. It's doing it for you, showing you exactly what your current inner film looks like. The reality as mirror concept is meant to help you read your own state, not to make you feel powerless. Think about a time when you were deeply in love. Didn't the world seem brighter, strangers kinder, and even small inconveniences easier to brush off? That wasn't the outer world changing randomly. It was the mirror responding to the state you were living in. The same principle works in reverse. If you're quietly carrying resentment or fear, people around you seem sharper, colder, or less cooperative. It's not coincidence. It's the world reflects you in action, faithfully delivering what matches your inner climate. The empowering part of this teaching is that you don't have to guess what state you're in. Your life is already showing you. Your relationships, finances, and daily interactions are feedback, letting you adjust the inner picture if you don't like what you see. Which leads to the next challenge, what most people do when they don't like the reflection. And here's where so many trip up. They start blaming the mirror instead of adjusting the image source. That's exactly what we'll get into next. Imagine you've got a smudge on your cheek. You walk up to a mirror, see it, and instead of washing your face, you grab a cloth and start scrubbing the glass. Sounds absurd, right? Yet that's exactly what people do when they try to fix the outer world without addressing the state creating it. Neville Goddard often warned about this trap. When you focus only on changing circumstances, you're working at the effect level, not the cause. The world reflects you based on your inner image. Without shifting that inner projection, the same patterns will simply find new ways to show up. It's like trying to change the plot of a movie by editing the theater screen instead of the film. You might hide certain parts or paint over the image temporarily, but the moment the next frame comes up, the original story returns. I once knew someone who kept jumping from job to job, convinced their bosses were always the problem. But each new position brought the same conflicts. It wasn't the workplaces conspiring against them. It was the assumption-shaped reality principle at work, mirroring their belief that authority figures couldn't be trusted. Blaming the reflection can feel satisfying in the moment because it puts the responsibility out there, but it also keeps you stuck. Why? Because you're reinforcing the same state: frustration, resentment, helplessness, and that state is what's feeding the reflection. The more you fight against what you see, the more energy you give it. Neville would say you're watering the weeds by focusing on them. Even if you're resisting the unwanted, you're still holding it in consciousness. And the law of assumption doesn't distinguish between attention you like and attention you don't. This is why some people seem to live the same problems for years. The details might change, but the emotional climate stays the same, and so the reality as mirror stays loyal to that climate. The shift begins when you stop treating the mirror as the enemy and start treating it as feedback. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, what state in me is being reflected here? That question alone can turn the whole dynamic around. And here's the beauty. The moment you take responsibility for the image, you take back your power. You stop being a victim of reflections and start becoming the artist of the image that's projected. Which naturally leads us to the next layer. Because if the mirror is shaped by the image inside, then we have to talk about how that image is formed. And that takes us straight into your assumptions and the way they tint the glass you're looking through. Every single one of us walks through life wearing invisible glasses. These lenses aren't made of glass or plastic. They're made of assumptions. And just like tinted lenses, they subtly color how we see the world and how the world seems to behave toward us. Neville Goddard taught that assumptions shape reality more than circumstances ever could. Your beliefs about people, money, relationships, and yourself form the invisible filter that determines what you notice, how you interpret it, and even how others respond to you. Two people can walk into the same party and have completely different experiences. One assumes people are friendly and open, so they find connection everywhere. The other assumes they'll be ignored or judged, and that's exactly what they pick up on, even in the same room at the same time. These assumptions aren't always logical. Many were inherited. Family sayings, cultural narratives, moments from childhood that planted certain truths in your mind. Over time, they become so familiar you forget they're there, but the reality as mirror principle never forgets. I remember a man who grew up hearing, "Money doesn't grow on trees," so often that it became a deep inner projection. As an adult, no matter how much he earned, his life reflected scarcity. Opportunities seemed to vanish. Investments failed. It wasn't bad luck. It was the lens he was looking through. The tricky part is that assumptions often feel like facts. "That's just the way it is one of the most dangerous phrases in the human vocabulary because it locks the lens in place. Yet in truth, your world reflects you, not some objective rulebook. This is where Neville's law of assumption becomes liberating. If an assumption can shape your reality negatively, it can also shape it positively. You can choose lenses that work for you instead of against you. But first, you have to become aware you're wearing them. One way to start is by noticing recurring patterns. Are you always attracting the same kind of challenge, the same type of person? That's your cue to ask, what assumption am I making that would naturally create this? Awareness is the first crack in the glass. And when you begin to shift these assumptions, even slightly, the outer world adjusts. Suddenly, the coincidences line up differently. People treat you in ways they never did before. That's the change in a change-outer process in action. But assumptions don't operate alone. They're fueled by something even more powerful, the emotional tone you carry day after day. And that's where Neville's most famous teaching comes into play. Feeling is the secret. Neville Goddard's famous phrase, "feeling is the secret," isn't about a fleeting mood. It's about the emotional climate you live in, the background tone that runs through your days, whether you notice it or not. That tone is what writes the script the outer world follows. Think of it like the soundtrack in a movie. You may not be paying attention to it, but it shapes how you experience every scene. A suspenseful score makes the same visual feel tense. A gentle piano turns it into something tender. Your emotional baseline works the same way with life. If your persistent feeling is one of quiet confidence, the reality as mirror will present you with people, opportunities, and outcomes that match it. If your underlying state is worry, the world will seem to confirm that there's something to worry about. This is why Neville stressed the importance of living in the end. When you step into the feeling of your wish fulfilled, even before anything changes outside, you're tuning your emotional climate to the desired reality. The law of assumption will take it from there. I once worked with a woman who tried affirmations daily, but felt constant frustration underneath. She'd say the right words, but her world reflected the tension she actually lived in. The moment she focused on genuinely shifting her feeling, not just her thoughts, her outer results began to change. Persistent feeling is like the soil where your assumptions grow. Plant the best seeds in rocky, dry soil and they won't thrive. But plant them in rich, well-watered soil, an emotional state of trust and receptivity, and they grow naturally. Here's the key. You don't have to be in bliss 24/7. You just need to hold the dominant tone of the state you want. Even with occasional dips, if your home base is faith, gratitude, or excitement, the imagination creates reality. Principle will mirror that more often than not. This is why temporary bursts of positivity aren't enough. Your subconscious isn't moved by a single good day. It's impressed by consistency. That's what persistence in feeling is all about, holding your inner climate steady until it becomes the new normal. When you start observing life this way, you can actually predict certain outcomes based on how you've been feeling. You'll notice the correlation is too strong to ignore. That's when the game changes, because you realize you can direct it. And directing it starts with awareness, which means the next step is learning to recognize the patterns in your life as the projections they are, so you can change them at the source. Most people live as if life is happening to them. They notice patterns, the same disappointments, the same personalities, the same blocks, but chalk it up to bad luck or that's just how the world is. Neville Goddard called this sleepwalking through life, unaware of the inner projection at play. The truth is, you're walking through an echo chamber of your own consciousness. The world reflects you with surgical precision, replaying your dominant states until you notice the loop. It's not punishment, it's feedback. Becoming aware starts with observation. Think about your life as a movie on repeat. Who are the recurring characters? What kinds of conflicts keep showing up? These aren't random. They're the most faithful expressions of your assumptions shape reality. I once knew a man who always ended up with friends who took advantage of him. Different cities, different jobs, different friend groups, same outcome. Once he realized he carried a quiet belief that, I'm the one people lean on but no one's there for me, the pattern made sense. The hard part is owning that the projection is yours. It's easier to say, why do people treat me this way, than to ask, what am I radiating that invites this? But the second question is the doorway to freedom. This awareness doesn't make you a control freak. It makes you a conscious participant. Instead of trying to micromanage the outer world, you start tending to the state you're carrying inside, knowing the reality as mirror will respond naturally. One practical way to build this awareness is journaling. At the end of the day, note any repeated situations or emotional themes. Over time, you'll spot the patterns your conscious mind tries to overlook. Another is to notice déjà vu moments. When you think, I've been here before, not in location but in feeling, stop and ask yourself, what state am I in right now? That awareness is the first step toward changing the projection. Neville taught that once you catch the loop, you can rewrite it. But you don't do it by force or willpower. You do it by crafting a new inner picture so compelling, your subconscious accepts it as fact. And that takes us right into a practical technique you can use, one that moves this from concept to something you can live starting today. Neville Goddard often said, live in the end. That means you imagine from the place where your desire is already fulfilled, not from the place of wanting it. You create a short, vivid scene that implies the wish has been realized, and you enter it fully in feeling until it becomes natural. The key is intimacy, not complexity. Don't build a 2-hour mental movie with every possible detail. Instead, pick a scene that would naturally happen if your desire were already true. Maybe it's a friend congratulating you, your partner smiling at you a certain way, or a letter in the mail with good news. Then bring it to life with all your senses. Hear the tone of voice, feel the handshake or hug, notice the light in the room. This sensory richness is what convinces your subconscious that it's real. And in Neville's framework, imagination creates reality. So once your subconscious accepts it, the outer must follow. This is where feeling is the secret comes in. You're not watching the scene like a movie. You're in it. You feel the warmth, relief, excitement, or peace that would come with living in the end. That feeling is the signal to your reality. Repetition matters. Neville advised returning to the scene night after night, ideally as you fall asleep, when your mind is most impressionable. Over time, the scene stops feeling like fantasy and starts feeling like memory. That's when the shift is locked in. I once heard of a man who wanted to move into his dream apartment. Every night he imagined lying in bed in that apartment, hearing the faint hum of the city below, feeling the weight of the same blanket he owned, just in a new space. Within months, a coincidence opened the exact door he'd been picturing. You can use this for anything: relationships, health, business. The form doesn't matter. The process is the same. Inner projection first, outer change second. Always. The most common mistake, imagining from the place of wanting. That keeps you in the state of, I don't have it yet, and the world reflects you accordingly. The shift happens when you enter the emotional state of already having. At first, you might feel like you're faking it. That's normal. But as you persist, your nervous system starts to adapt to the new reality, and the scene feels increasingly real. That's when the law of assumption goes to work behind the scenes. And soon, you'll start to notice little ripples in your world, small changes that signal the reflection is beginning to shift. That's the next thing we need to talk about. One of the most exciting moments in this work is when you catch the first hints that your outer world is rearranging itself. These signs might be small, almost easy to overlook, but they carry a special feeling, like a wink from the universe confirming you're on the right track. Sometimes it's a familiar problem dissolving without you lifting a finger. Other times, it's an unexpected kindness from someone who used to be distant. Neville Goddard would say the reality as mirror is beginning to catch up with the new inner projection you've been living in. These changes often feel effortless because you're no longer forcing outcomes, you're aligning states. You're holding the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and the world reflects you naturally without struggle. Pay attention to coincidences. You think of someone, and they call. You overhear a conversation that answers a question you've been wrestling with. You spot a chance opportunity that wasn't there before. These aren't random. They're the law of assumption in motion. I once knew a woman who decided to feel daily appreciation for her home, even though she wanted to move. Within weeks, a neighbor casually mentioned an apartment for sale that matched her dream list, one she hadn't even been looking for. These little shifts are important because they build trust in the process. They remind you that change doesn't always start with grand, dramatic events. It often starts with subtle adjustments that snowball over time. However, this is also the stage where many people sabotage themselves. They see small wins, get impatient for bigger ones, and slide back into old states of doubt or frustration, resetting the mirror. Neville taught persistence for this exact reason. If you take the early signs as proof and keep living in the end, the momentum builds. If you take them as not enough, you stop the flow. The outer world is like a photo slowly developing in a dark room. The image is forming, but you have to give it time. Pull it out too early, and it never fully appears. Which brings us to one of the most critical parts of the journey, staying steady during the lag, when your new reality is on its way but hasn't yet fully taken shape. The lag is the stretch of time between shifting your inner state and seeing the full reflection appear outside. It's where patience is tested, doubts try to creep in, and old patterns try to pull you back. Neville Goddard warned that this is when most people give up, not realizing the change is already underway. Think of it like turning a massive ship. The moment you adjust the wheel, the direction shifts, but the scenery stays the same for a while because of momentum. Your world reflects you, but it does so over time, matching the state you persist in, not the one you visit occasionally. This is why feeling is the secret isn't about quick bursts of positivity. It's about holding the emotional tone of the wish fulfilled consistently, even when the outer still looks like the past. That's how the law of assumption locks in a new reality. I once worked with someone who was manifesting a career change. Weeks went by with no visible progress, but he kept living in the end, picturing himself in his new role, feeling the satisfaction of meaningful work. Then, out of nowhere, an offer came from a company he hadn't even applied to. In the lag, your biggest enemy is the temptation to check reality for signs. It's like planting seeds and digging them up every morning to see if they've sprouted. The process thrives in trust, not constant inspection. Neville compared it to the gestation period in nature. Just as every seed, pregnancy, or creative project has an incubation time, your new reality needs its own invisible preparation before it's ready to appear. This stage can feel uncomfortable because it exposes where your faith really stands. Do you believe the imagination creates reality only when it's instantly confirmed, or do you trust it enough to let it work without your interference? One practical tip: when doubts show up, return to your imaginal scene instead of analyzing the outer world. Feed the state, not the fear. The reflection will catch up. It has no choice if the inner picture is stable. Remember, persistence isn't about force. It's about loyalty to the state you've chosen. Even if emotions wobble, come back to the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it becomes your default home. And once you've mastered that, you realize the truth that ties all of Neville's teachings together. You control the image, not the mirror. Here's the ultimate freedom in Neville Goddard's work. The outer world is not the source of your reality. It's the reflection. You don't have to beg it to change or push against it. Your real influence is over the image you hold inside, because the world reflects you without fail. This means you can stop wrestling with circumstances. The moment you understand that the mirror can only show what you project, you stop wasting energy on trying to manipulate the outer scene. Instead, you invest it where it counts, in your inner state. Change inner, change outer isn't just a nice phrase. It's the direct blueprint of creation. Every assumption, every persistent feeling, every inner picture is quietly instructing reality on how to behave toward you. I once heard Neville tell a story about a woman who was constantly criticized at work. She kept asking, "Why do they treat me this way?" When she shifted her self-concept to someone deeply respected and valued, the treatment changed, without a word being spoken to her co-workers. This is why living in the end works. You're not waiting for proof to feel different. You're choosing to feel different so the proof can appear. The law of assumption simply mirrors the state you've made your own. Think of it like photography. The lens, your assumptions, and the light, your feelings, determine the image that will show up on the paper. Once the photo is taken, the developing process, time, simply reveals what was already captured. Trying to change the mirror without changing the image is like yelling at your reflection to smile. The change has to happen at the source, and in this case, the source is always your consciousness. This understanding moves you from feeling like life's victim to being its creator. You're no longer reacting to every flicker in the mirror. You're shaping the light that makes the image possible in the first place. And the beauty is, you can start at any moment. You don't need permission, resources, or even a perfect plan. You need only to decide the inner picture you will hold and to feel it as real now. Once you truly see that the mirror has no power without your projection, you stop fearing it. You become the quiet architect of your world, knowing it will always, without exception, reflect the image you've chosen to live in. So now you know, the mirror was never in control. It was only ever showing you the state you were living in. The world reflects you, not the other way around, and that means the power to change your life has always been right where it belongs, inside you. The question is, what image will you choose from this moment on? Will you keep feeding the old assumptions that have been shaping your reality, or will you step into the law of assumption and live in the end of the life you truly want? Remember, feeling is the secret. The more you return to the emotional state of your wish fulfilled, the faster the reality as mirror will adjust to match it. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for signs. You can start projecting a new image right now. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay close. Every week, we go deeper into the art of conscious creation, because your next reflection starts with the image you choose today.